Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This has been going around in the various social medias. It's supposed to be depicting the live footage of the launch of Zimbabwe's gold ZIG currency, this structured new currency is supposed to be anchored on Zimbabwe's gold and foreign currency reserves. And people have got such a low opinion of the whole thing. This is what they've been depicting it. Them was a vehicle lying on its side. And to relaunch it, they picked it up on its way to pariah. To the point where they can't even recover it. This is how Zimbabweans view the new currency. There is no doubt in many people's minds that this is going to be just another wasted opportunity. The regime, ever since Zimbabwe's independence in 1990, the country has been in decline, economic decline. And the regime has always claimed that it has got a solution. And one solution after another have failed. The truth of the matter is Zimbabwe will never have any meaningful economic recovery without dealing with the problem of gross mismanagement and corruption. That is at the heart of it. Here is a video of the former governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, Gideon Gono, giving his own take of the new ZIG, the new currency.
And a lot more directive than I was. I would always say you can appoint all Zimbabweans to become governors, but there was an elephant in the room, which unless it was exercised, all the 14 million governors that you would appoint will never succeed.
What was that elephant in the room?
It's still there. Yeah, it is still there.
What is it?
We all know.
Okay, yeah. So let me ask you this.
Yeah. So
do you think that your close relationship to with President Robert Mugabe compromised your ability to be much more forthright with the authorities?
Actually, it helped. It helped a lot in the sense that I could, when I was at CBZ, for instance, that's when the relationship started. When I was at CBZ, I was able to ask him to be my client. And he was predominantly, he was never a borrower, he was a depositor. I would then go to him and say, you know what? Your deposits that you brought to me are under threat from people who borrowed that money.
They are not paying back.
They are not paying back. If you ask for it, I will not be able to pay you. And he would say, what? I would say, yes. And therefore, he would rein in on the politicians.
So you don't think it compromised you at all?
It didn't compromise.
Even as governor?
It didn't compromise. There were limits to which I could go. It was more of persuasion and advisory.
Well, I think that is just him giving a meaningless answer there. The truth of the matter is he was aware of this elephant in the room. And as he rightly admits there, even if we were to have 4 million governors appointed, none of them will change anything as long as we have the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is the mismanagement, the corruption, the politically motivated decisions which have no sound economic basis at all. This is at the heart of Zimbabwe's economic meltdown. We have had a regime, the Zanu PF regime, that has been able to do as it damn well pleases. At the heart of this new currency, this ZiG, is the undertaking that the ZiG current will be tied to the gold reserves held by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. Everybody knows that one of the problems we have in Zimbabwe with the gold is that it is being smuggled. On paper, one could say, oh, we have got, as the government tried to show the other day, that we've got 1.5 tons of gold in the vault. But if it's not properly audited, who knows what is really there? And even if we saw the photograph of Mnangagwa being shown, the so-called 1.5 tons of gold in the vault, can anybody be confidently say that that 1.5 ton is still there? We know this is a regime that is in the habit of lying to people, telling them one thing when they know it's a lie. And it is that lack of confidence that has eroded Zimbabwe's, the people's confidence in the regime and how things are managed. This new currency has been launched on the basis of 1 ZiG is equal to 6 US cents. But everybody knows that as people start losing confidence in the new currency, as more and more of the ZiG start to be circulated, they will know that the corresponding amount of gold in the vault and the foreign currency to back the currency, the balance will start weighing the other way, where we've got more money than the reserves that is supposed to back it. And that is what will erode the confidence in the currency. It will start losing its value. We are now in April, just gone past the first, nearly through the first week of April. I think it will come as no surprise at all that by end of June, the ZiG will no longer be equal to 6 US cents. They'll be very lucky if 10 ZiGs are equal to 6 US cents. And by the end of the year, if nothing is done to curtail the nearly 2,000% rate of inflation, we'll be looking at something totally different. Even 1,000, see, be very lucky if they're still worth 6 US cents. This is a regime that has got the habit of printing money. And in this case here, that is what has fueled inflation in the past. And also, the other factor that is undermined is that we're supposed to have on paper so much gold and foreign currency, but in reality, we have far, far less than what we're supposed to be having on paper. And this was well documented in last year's Al Jazeera gold mafia. The level of corruption and looting in Zimbabwe beggars belief. The country, according to that documentary, was losing as much as 80% of its gold through these smugglers. And so on paper, we may have 100% of the gold, but in reality, we only have got 20%. And these people, some of them would come back, would get a license to take out the gold. They will claim that they've got a license and they've used it, and their license says they are allowed to take out 50 kgs of gold. But they'll use that same license over and over again. On paper, they've only taken out 50 kgs, but in reality, they may have taken out 4 times that using the same license. And coming back to justify the 50 kgs of gold that they took out, if the amount of money they're supposed to bring in US dollar is supposed to be 2 million, they will declare that they brought in 2 million US dollars from selling the gold. But in reality, bring in half of that. So on paper, we look like we're doing well, but in reality, we are not. And hence the reason why on paper, the country had all the foreign currency that it requires. But in practice, the country was failing to pay for basic necessities like medicine, fuel, and other important imports because the money wasn't there. I think this is where we are. The tragedy here is how long are Zimbabweans going to allow this circus to carry on? As Gono there clearly pointed out, the elephant is still in the room. Issues that have undermined our economic performance, why Zimbabwe is in such a political mess, are still there. Nothing has been changed there. And so we can expect the economic meltdown to continue. After 44 years of this corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical Zanu PF rule, the country is in a serious economic situation. The idea that we can allow this to continue is an outrage. It is. Zimbabweans have to wake up to the reality that Zanu PF is not going to reform itself out of power, and so will continue to give empty promises of no, we have got it now. This time things will get better, and yet nothing changes. Those of you who get the opportunity to listen to this interview that Gideon Gono gave, it's an eye-opener. He himself, of course, tries to give us account of what happened in as a glorious light as he can possibly make it. You know, he is there, he saved the nation, he would want you to believe. But of course, he did not. Here was the governor who presided over one of the most economic disasters in Zimbabwe's history. While Gideon Gono was governor of the Reserve Bank, that's when Zimbabwe's inflation soared to world record, nauseating heights. Inflation soared to 500 billion% in 2008. The Zimbabwe dollar lost its value completely. He was responsible for printing money. The Zimbabwe dollar was printing amounts, paper money, to the tune of trillions of dollars. $100 trillion notes were being printed. And within a few days of that money being printed, you find that its value was absolutely worthless. The economy ground to a halt. There was nothing in the shops. It was impossible to do any meaningful business. How could you trade and charge or be paid in the local Zimbabwe dollar when its value is changing so quickly? You could go into a shop and whatever is there, if the price is 5 million Zimbabwe dollars, by the time you've picked up the item to take it to the till, when you get to the till, you could be told the price has doubled. That's how quickly things were changing. People's savings were wiped out with that hyperinflation. Their pension, everything. Many people lost their livelihoods thanks to Gideon Gono's printing crazy, money printing crazy. He would turn around and say it wasn't his fault. He was being told to do it. But as governor, there is something he himself should have been able to say, well, I can't continue in this position and be responsible as the governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe for what is going on here. What he was trying to explain towards the end of that interview is how some people's money was being stolen. People were encouraged to deposit their money in foreign currency. And all the banks were forced to transfer all those foreign currency accounts to the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, for instance. And when the bank turned around and said they wanted to access that money, Gideon Gono will tell them that money has already been used. That's daytime robbery, that. But many people lost their entire savings that way. They'll be paid in absolutely valueless Zimbabwe dollars. People like him, at the beginning of this whole interview with Trevor Ngube, he talked about him being a chicken farmer. People like him who were in the ruling elite, they profited incredibly. They would get their foreign currency at the official exchange rate for whatever reason they gave to get the foreign currency. In some cases, they will not spend the money for whatever they were going to do, pay it for. They will sell the foreign currency on the black market at exchange rates that were exorbitant. 1,000 times the official exchange rate. How could he possibly fail to make money that way? Some of them would get money in foreign currency, loans, and then they'll be asked to pay back the loan at the official exchange rate. And sometimes it will be a year later. You're given a grace period to pay that loan. And at the runaway inflation that we're talking about, which peaked at 500 billion%, can imagine, by the time you pay back the loan a year later, if you had received $1 million and you pay it back in local currency at the exchange rate that you got it at, the value of the local dollar will have devalued to the point where if you were to go and buy the foreign currency, you are literally paying back a $1 million loan with 100 or 200 US dollars. In some cases, they never even bothered to pay back those loans. And as we know, government passed a law that allowed the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe to pass on those loans, those debts to government. So that now they were being paid back by the taxpayer. And yet the ordinary people did not benefit from those loans. It's only the ruling elite. This is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. We have seen this happen again and again and again. Gideon Gono here is talking of there was an elephant in the room. Yes, he saw the elephant. He was one of the people who were well aware of the elephant. But he did not do anything about it, much less resign, because he was benefiting from the system. The present governor is well aware that this ZIG currency that they've launched is not going to change anything. He is aware that the elephant in the room is still there. But he is willing to go along and pretend that they've solved the problem, just to string the people along. What I say to the people of Zimbabwe is, how long are you going to allow this madness to continue? Because as long as you allow it to continue, it will continue. This ZIG is not solving anything. Absolutely nothing. The hyperinflation that we have seen will continue. The ZIG will lose its value just as the other currencies that the regime tried to launch the past have lost their value, undermining confidence in the country's economy, and millions of our people are now living in abject poverty. And their situation is only going to get worse. And the numbers of those in abject poverty will only be increasing. Basic infrastructure have been neglected for decades. And basic services like education and healthcare for the ordinary people, these have all but collapsed. But the situation will only get even worse. So I ask you the question again. My parting question is, how long are the people of Zimbabwe going to allow this madness to continue? Thank you very much for listening, and good night.